Welcome inside the Broncos Studio. I'm your team reporter and host, Elisa Hernandez, next to our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. The Broncos season has come to an end. We heard from head coach Sean Payton and general manager George Paton as they addressed the media at the end of the season press conferences on a variety of topics. We're going to talk about our top takeaways, starting with the team's mentality entering the offseason.
Yeah, Lisa, I think obviously it's helpful when you get to hear from the team's decision makers following a tough end of the season. The Broncos a 3-point loss the other day in the AFC Championship game, and I think the first thing is that George Paton, Sean Payton, they both acknowledge that this is a painful one. It's a tough way for the season to end. I think one thing that stood out to me was that Sean Payton said, listen, in this business, you're going to suffer these sorts of tough losses. You're going to suffer these sorts of gut punches, and the Broncos have done it before, and they've responded, whether it was the loss in Miami a couple of years ago, whether it was the last-second loss to Kansas City a year ago when the Broncos responded by winning 4 in a row and surging to the postseason. And now you get another chance in 2026 to respond to a tough 3-point loss when you're on the doorstep of the Super Bowl. And Sean Payton said you don't have any other option, right? You can't not come back ready to go because otherwise you'll never get to taste that success. So that's what stands out first and foremost. And then it's about the off season and how do you move forward, because it's not just picking up where you left off. It's not just the next step. You've got to start from scratch. Sean Payton said, listen, you start the race all over again and you get your orange slices and you go back to the starting line and you start over. But what the team can count on is, one, that confidence that you built in 2025, the experience that you got, and then also from a more technical standpoint, the increased salary cap space you'll have entering this offseason is one of the things that makes this an exciting few months as we gear up for 2026.
Yeah, a lot of the talk around was just the heartbreaking loss, of course, but moving forward, and George Paton was asked, like, do you watch the Super Bowl? And he's like, yeah. He's like, right now in this moment, I'm going to say no, but you watch it because you love the game. And he said he told the players that if you envision yourself there one day, you have to watch these games. You have to picture yourself being in that moment. And that's where you can't be afraid to kind of go back and be discouraged to come back and see yourself once again in the AFC Championship, knowing how quickly they turned everything around. And George Paton really did credit Sean Payton and the culture he's built here, the winning culture. He acknowledged, this team hadn't won in a long time. And so when you have these expectations, sometimes you are going to have that gut punch of suffering, a big loss. But they seem really strong in the foundation that they have here and just the confidence they have for not only what they accomplished, but going into next season.
Yeah, I think there's, like you said, there's a good foundation in place. I think it starts, of course, with the quarterback in Bo Nix, right? And the way he played this season. We got kind of a quick injury update on him. There's no official timetable. It sounded like at some point in the offseason he would be back. And one interesting note that Sean Payton mentioned on the injury front was that this was a kind of sooner rather than later sort of injury, that when they went in and did the surgery, it became clear this was going to surface at some point. And so it wasn't an avoidable sort of injury, but also doesn't sound like there's any sort of long-term concern there. What I will say with Bo is that it's clear from talking to the guys on Monday in terms of his teammates, and then also hearing from George Paton just about the confidence that he inspires in this group and the fact that late in games he's at his best, and when you need him, he's at his best, and that the number one stat in terms of this team evaluating what they're getting from the quarterback position is wins. And George Paton said it. No quarterback in NFL history has won more games than Bo Nix in their first 2 seasons. And so as you go into this offseason and you talk about that foundation and you talk about where you can add and what you're going to evaluate, I think the fact that you've got a quarterback is one of the things you can hang your hat on, and one of the things that sets the tone moving forward. And as you look at free agency and you look at who can we add, one of the things that is going to attract people to come here is Bo Nix and is that quarterback position. And so from that standpoint, the Broncos are in really good shape, and it gives you excitement for what 2026 can be.
Yeah, Talanoa Hufanga spoke on that specifically, and he said there's a reason I wore a shirt with his face on it so that he can feel the confidence that I have in him, so he can see that we all believe in him and knowing what he's capable of. George Paton also mentioned there's certain things you can develop in a quarterback. Having that it factor, having that X factor, knowing that he said at some point in the season, even when you're down, you're like, well, we're going to win this, because Bo Nix has just shown that over the years, and you can't teach that. And so I think the confidence that they have, and saying that he's been handling this injury like a pro, and just the fact that they're confident that he will be back. And as you mentioned, he is a big asset to this team, and he's a lot of the reason why free agents are going to want to come here. And on top of so many other things, from ownership to the staff, the medical staff that helps players get back from injury. We have talked about this before the season, saying how the Broncos went from one of the most injured teams to one of the most healthy teams because the resources that are dumped into this. And George Paton mentioned that it's an easy sell when you're talking about this to free agents.
Yeah, and I think now the challenge becomes, and you go into this offseason, you evaluate your own roster, how it compares to the rest of the league, the AFC West. You evaluate where you need to add. You make a free agent plan, you make a draft plan, and it becomes this process. But even though you have this added salary cap space now, you still have to take a prudent approach, as George Paton said. You still have to make good decisions, and you still have to scout well and bring the right people in and again, make those sound decisions and have another good offseason. And a year ago, George Paton, Sean Payton, they sat there and they said, winning the AFC West is going to be our goal.
Yeah.
And they said that we've got to have a really good offseason to do that. And I think they did have a good offseason. Then obviously they went and won the AFC West, got the number 1 seed, and now it's time to have another good offseason. And George Paton was asked, is it Super Bowl or bust next year? And he said, look, we're just going to follow the process. We're going to take this one step at a time. And he's always had that approach. But he also did add that they're going to be aggressive the same way other teams are going to be aggressive, and that they have to, kind of take that step forward. And so as you go into this offseason, I think it's exciting to be a Broncos fan because they have the resources, they have the opportunity in free agency, they have the draft picks to take a next step from a roster standpoint. But then, as Sean Payton says, the work has to begin anew because you don't just pick up where you left off. So an exciting time for sure as we go into this offseason. I think the kind of big theme for me is that there is this disappointment from the way things ended, but you have to let it fuel you, and then you have to take what you were able to accomplish in 2025 and have it help you build for next year.
Well, there you have it, Broncos country. For the latest news and headlines, make sure you guys visit denverbroncos.com. Stay up to date with all of the end of the season press conferences.